The research vessel Polyarnea Zvezda has been plowing the cold waters of the Arctic for a third week already. The crew, headed by Captain John Anderson, performed an important mission to study the influence of global warming on Arctic ice. The scientists took samples of the thickness of the ice sheet, water temperature, and the state of the local ecosystem. As time wore on, fatigue began to creep over the team, but everyone realized the importance of what they were doing. No one could have anticipated this ordinary expedition would soon become such an amazing adventure. Then, without warning, the stillness of that Arctic day was interrupted by a shout from the lookout ahead. "Polar bear on starboard." All crew members hastened to the sides for a glimpse of this grand animal. What they saw, though, sent them cold with amazement. A huge polar bear, seemingly chasing their ship. It was an unusual incident, one that made Captain Anderson order a slowdown to observe this incident a little closer. The animal behaved strangely. It kept trying to climb on its hind legs, making loud noises and pointing its paw in a specific direction. Its powerful paws sliced through the icy water with incredible strength and grace. Heated discussion began amongst the crew members. Some suggested the bear was simply hungry and searching for easy prey. Others said it might be hurt or sick. With each passing minute, the mood on board was heating up. Even the chief engineer, Pete, suggested scaring the bear away by using the ship's siren, but the captain rejected his idea. Dr. Emily Harris, an experienced biologist, carefully observed the bear through binoculars. Her hands shook with excitement a little as she noticed something strange. "This is not aggression," she muttered, but her eyes were not leaving the binoculars. "It seems that the bear is desperately trying to tell us something." Emily recalled the years she had studied Arctic fauna, yet she never came across this type of behavior. Captain Anderson, having heard Dr. Harris' words, made a decision quite risky. He ran his hand through his graying beard, took a deep breath, and ordered the ship to come full stop and have a small boat lowered for a closer look. Emily stepped forward to take charge of this perilous expedition against the protests of some members of the crew. When the boat carrying Emily and two seasoned sailors, Mike and Tom, came clear of the ship, the hearts of all those on board went with them. Nobody knew what to expect from this close encounter with one of the most fearsome predators on the planet. Mike squeezed the oars tightly. His knuckles were white. Tom checked and rechecked the rescue equipment, trying to take his mind away from a growing sense of tension and fear. The boat was gradually approaching the bear. Icy wind burned the faces of the researchers, but they didn't pay attention to it because they were fully concentrated on the animal that was approaching them. The predator, noticing this, suddenly swam in their direction. Mike was about to turn the boat around. His hand instinctively reached for the signal pistol, but Emily motioned to stop him. She noticed something strange in the bear's gaze. It was not the look of a predator, but rather entreaty. In one moment, the bear swam right up to the boat. All three researchers held their breath. Drops of icy water, scattered by the bear's powerful movements, fell on their faces, mixing with drops of sweat. And then the unbelievable happened. The bear began to utter some sounds more like whining than growling. He pointed his head in one direction over and over again. His eyes seemed to be full of despair. Emily, at the risk of her life, leaned over the side to get a better look at the bear. Her heart was racing so hard it seemed like it would leap out of her chest. "His behavior is very unusual," she said in a quivering tone. "It seems that the bear—" This thought sounded unbelievable, but the more they watched the bear's behavior, the more convinced they became of its plausibility. The bear was not aggressive, and his actions were too deliberate to be of simple curiosity. He dived under the water every now and then, as if trying to show something to the researchers. After a long discussion with the captain on the radio, with interference and cracking ice, a decision was taken to follow the bear. It was risky, but people's intuition told them they had to do it. Captain Anderson stood on the bridge, holding tightly onto the handrails, realizing full well this could be a decision that would truly cost them everything. The ship turned its heading to the direction the bear seemed to point, its movements slow. Sometimes huge ice floes barred the way, and the captain had to maneuver with the greatest care. Every time ice hit the ship's hull, It sent an eerie echo in the hearts of the crew members. The journey lasted several hours. And indeed, with each minute that passed, the tension on board mounted. Soon, it was overt, with some crew members feeling this idea crazy and dangerous. A heated argument began in the wardroom, the beginning of what promised to grow into open conflict. But Captain Anderson and Dr. Harris were not going to leave the mystery unsolved, even if it would cost them their careers and reputations. The weather suddenly started deteriorating sharply. The sky was fully covered with thick gray clouds. A strong wind rose, howling like a pack of hungry wolves. The waves began to rise higher and higher. The ship started to pitch and roll violently. Equipment on the deck creaked ominously, threatening at any moment to break off the fasteners. Captain Anderson began seriously to take thought about the safety of the ship and crew. His face became serious and concentrated. He seemed to sense their doubts. He began to swim faster, his powerful body cutting through the waves at an incredible speed. He kept looking back at the ship, as if begging them not to stop. His behavior became more and more desperate, which only increased the intrigue of what was happening. Emily was not able to look away from the animal, and her scientific mind refused to accept what was happening. But her heart told her that they were indeed on the edge of something fantastic. Suddenly, the radio operator's cry came from the cabin. He ran out on deck waving a piece of paper, his face pale with fear. He said he had received a storm warning. A severe storm was approaching their area, and they had only a few hours to find safe shelter or get out of the danger zone. The news swept through the ship, causing a wave of panic among the crew. The difficult choice stood before Captain Anderson. To follow the bear further meant to endanger the whole crew and the ship. But something in the behavior of the animal did not allow him to make a decision about returning. He looked at the storm clouds that approached, then at the bear, which swam next to the ship, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. And in that very moment, the lookout up front began shouting that he saw something far away. His voice squeaked high as he spoke, and immediately, every person on that boat turned to hear. The crew joined those at the side of the ship, pushing and nudging to get the best position for the view. They had seen, through the incipient fog and waves, something on the horizon, but not distinctly what it was. The air was full of the electricity of agonizing suspense. The bear, on the cry of the lookout ahead, raised such a loud roar that seemed to split the very heavens. He now swam faster, his movements sharper and more purposeful. His behavior became so excited there was no doubt they were getting closer to solving this mystery. Down Emily's spine ran a chill of anticipation. Tension culminated on the ship when they drew closer to the mysterious object. The storm was approaching, with the peals of thunder already heard in the distance. Visibility was worsening minute by minute, with the fog actually getting thicker, as if wanting to shield the mystery from them. Captain Anderson knew that they had less and less time to make a decision. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white with exertion. As they drew closer, the fog revealed to them that there was an extensive ice field before them. At first glance, it was no different from the hundreds of others they had come to see in the Arctic. However, the bear was quite excited by this view. He began making strange noises almost like a growl-whine mix, and his mannerisms were even more insistent. Captain Anderson ordered the ship to stop at a safe distance from the ice field. The waves were getting higher, and it was dangerous to get too close to the unpredictable ice. The ship shuddered with the impact of the waves, as if it were a living creature that felt the approach of danger. Dr. Harris asked for permission to launch the boat for a more detailed study, not paying attention to the growing wind that ruffled her hair. Her eyes ablaze with determination and scientific interest. The captain hesitated. The storm was already much too close. Its roar was drowning out all other sounds. But the persistence of Emily and the inexplicable behavior of the bear finally made him agree, albeit with great reluctance. He realized that with this decision, he was putting not only the success of the expedition at stake, but also the lives of people. Emily, Mike, and Tom put on their life jackets and checked their gear and got back into the boat. Serious but full of determination, their faces turned toward the ice field. The waves were tossing the small vessel about like a toy, yet they stubbornly forged ahead. The bear swam beside them, constantly looking back as if to hurry them along. His huge body next to the fragile boat seemed even more imposing and frightening. When they reached close to the ice, they began to hear strange sounds. First, they thought that it was only the wind or the cracking of ice, but soon understood that the sounds were similar to some barely heard whining or crying. These sounds made their hearts beat even more strongly, their hands firmly grasping the oars. People started peering attentively at the surface of the ice in order to find the source of strange sounds. Every crack, every shadow on the ice could hide the answer to the mystery. Meanwhile, the bear climbed out onto the ice and started walking back and forth as if showing them something. Its huge paws sank in the snow deeply, and then they saw it. In one great depression on the ice lay 2 small bear cubs. They looked starved and weak, utterly unable to get out of their ice trap. Well, now everything became clear. This enormous polar bear was actually a female bear, desperately trying to save her cubs. She didn't just chase the ship. She sought help from people. This discovery shocked everybody on board. Nobody could believe that a wild animal was capable of such a meaningful act. Captain Anderson immediately organized the rescue operation. He knew he did not have much time. At any moment, the ice floe could start to melt or drift away, which would put the cubs' lives in grave danger. Immediately, an operation to save them was sketched out by the team. With the use of special equipment, they carefully took the cubs out of the ice trap and transferred them onto the ship. All that time, the bear attentively watched what was being done, yet he did not meddle with people. With the cubs finally in safety on the ship, the crew started giving first aid to the cubs. Dr. Harris checked the babies and was thankful to find that they were all exhausted, but none of them had been seriously hurt. Captain Anderson decided that he would transport the bear family to a nearby large area of stable ice. This journey took several hours, during which the bear relentlessly followed the ship. Finally, they reached a suitable place. The cubs were carefully lowered onto the ice, and their mother quickly joined them. The crew watched the touching family reunion with excitement. Before taking her cubs away, the bear turned to the ship for the last time and let out a soft growl. The crew took it as some form of gratitude from the animal. Then she took her cubs deeper into the icy expanses, and for a long time, people looked in the direction of the disappearing bear family. This extraordinary story has become a symbol of the incredible connection between man and wildlife, which did indeed show that under the harshest conditions of the Arctic, mutual understanding and cooperation among species are possible. This is a fantastic adventure that Captain Anderson, Dr. Harris, and the entire crew of the Polar Star will never forget. It changed not only their view about the intellect and emotional world of animals, but also reminded them of the readiness to be attentive to nature and its inhabitants.